It's not every day that you meet someone who's a decision maker in a company that has decisively changed the way entertainment content is consumed across the world. But let me first take you back to my first brush with Netflix. It was a series many of you would have seen, Breaking Bad, the best of television ever.
Now, say my name. Heisenberg. You're goddamn right.
My second stint was with Netflix India with a series called Sacred Games, not on top of my OTT greats list, but definitely unlike anything I had seen on Indian television before. Since then, my relationship with Netflix as a viewer has been very similar to the other viewers' relationship. Hits and misses, likes and dislikes. But that is exactly what Netflix thrives on, the divisive and the often polarizing nature of its content. No Netflix content is for everyone. But as a journalist, my curiosity has always been piqued with how Netflix has done as a company. Now, the Netflix India story is a progressing piece of the overall Netflix global story, which spans 278 million subscribers, 7,000 original titles, apart from films and other content. And it's been a very interesting corporate story too, right, Arjit?
Yeah, Anirban. As we all know, Netflix is at the heart of the FANG stocks, which is the technology bellwether of Wall Street. Just a year back, the entire equity markets in America were dismissive about growth, about profitability. Netflix was clearly running out of hits. But now, coming out of a stellar quarter, Wall Street was pleasantly surprised. 8 million new subscribers were added between April and June. Revenue shot up 17% to a mouth-watering $9.6 billion. Clearly, Netflix, as we know it during the pandemic, that growth momentum on Anirban seems to be back.
Absolutely. But we are here to focus on the India story and how it's evolving. And for that, we have with us Monika Shergill, Vice President Content at Netflix India. Now, Monika brings a wealth of expertise and experience from her previous stints in Sony, Star, and Viacom 18. She's responsible for all the titles that you see on Netflix India today, right from Hira Mandi to Amar Singh Chamkila. Lesser known fact, Monika loves her workplace so much that she often cartwheels to office self-confessedly. But we are not here to talk about workplace happiness. We are here to talk about the Netflix India story and its upcoming episodes and seasons. From the Morning Brief, I'm your host Anirban Chaudhary. Joining me is Arijit Barman. Welcome to a very special corner of his conversation. Monika, welcome to the Morning Brief.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
So you started your stint in 2019, just before the pandemic led to a boom in OTT content. Then there was a slight lull, and we had Reed Hastings saying that he's sort of frustrated with the slow success of Netflix in India. Then you touched record highs in 2023. And then now India is the second biggest market in terms of incremental paid subscribers. What do you say in your journey are the three things that have changed in Netflix?
Lots has changed. We were barely into a year of original programming in India when I joined here. We had our first season of Sacred Games, which I saw from the outside in 2018. And I joined in the back half of 2019. And within a few months, the pandemic hit, as you say. So the dramatic changes actually from that time till date have been really building an amazing team. And everything that I would say, or any of you would say, is a credit to me, is actually a credit to the whole team. It's the team that we built and the strategy and the vision that I started out with when I joined here. The one thing I was missing was that what are we here to do? Who are we here to be? And what is the size of audience that we are here to entertain? For Netflix, it's very important in every market to know that we are here to entertain the market and really to entertain the world. And looking at that, who do we want to be was a very important question to answer. So setting the vision for that and then really building a team that can deliver that vision. That was a very important first step that one took. In strategy, when I say what would we do differently than what others are doing, what is most important to us as Netflix is to have the variety and the quality. Something that no one can deliver at the pace that Netflix delivers, with the consistency that Netflix delivers, and the scale at which only Netflix can deliver. And we were not doing that earlier. We were stopping and starting. So it was a bit of a choppy start at the beginning. We had some very early successes like Sacred Games, which was a really landmark show for the Indian market. It was the first of its kind. And I heard you say you didn't, it was
Not on
not
top
at
of my
the
list,
top
but
of,
yeah. But
and that's a fair point. Everything, like you also rightly said, is not meant for everyone. But it was a very iconic show. It completely changed the way TV was looked at. Long format storytelling was looked at in India. And we felt very proud of the show. Then Delhi Crime happened. But we also had a bunch of shows that were fairly experimental because we didn't have boots on the ground. There was an understanding which was very gradually building of who we want to be. So my first job when I came here was to really set that very clear for everyone. Who do we want to be, and how do we want to entertain, and what are the creative bets that we should be taking? And then how do we play to the variety and quality narrative that people see us delivering to more than anyone else in the streaming space? And I think that's what we set out to do. And the third thing that was very important for us to do was, how do we take India to the world? Going deeper within India is always the core objective. This is the audience. Local audience is the audience that we create for, that we find stories for, that we take the creators to. But how do we also, as part of global Netflix, take Indian stories and Indian creators to the world? So I think that was very exciting for us, and all the accolades that we've got in terms of the Oscar, the international Emmys, the number of countries that the content has been trending in over the last 2 or 3 years. I think all of that speaks to how differently Netflix plays out for the audience and what our definition of successful entertainment is.
when would you say you found your rhythm from the irregular bit that you spoke about?
So I think we were already working on it from early 2020. Once gradually the team started coming together, it was a journey. 70% of my team was hired during the COVID period virtually, and really getting everyone to align on the strategy and starting productions. You're also aware that productions were actually very challenged at that point in time. And I think from 2021 December is what we were prepping for, where it was, of course, meant to be. If I had my way, it would have, we would have done lots of big changes from 2020 end. But I think COVID slowed down the whole world, and particularly the production market, and for all the right reasons. But we started with our price change. I think we had titles like Aranyak, which was a very successful crime thriller for us. Suryavanshi came on the service. Minnal Murli became a very big hit on the service. We also had a very quirky and wonderful show called Decoupled at that time, which got a lot of love.
So, what did you say this is for? I mean, who's really interested in listening to a separating couple talk about marriage?
Everyone.
So very diverse in the same month. And plus we had the global hit Money Heist also coming. So if you look at December 2021, it was absolutely like a step change, a radical shift in what we were before and what tone we set. From that time onward, it's been about quarter on quarter growth, year on year momentum. So it's just been, a lot of creative bets and different bets playing out.
Right. You spoke about some of my favorite titles, especially Minnal Murli. So let's talk about a different kind of journey that I'm very curious about. That of content from, say, the mind of a writer or a piece of paper or an idea in the Netflix management's mind to when it lands on screen. I would love it if you gave me an example of something like, say, a Korean Cyanide or your upcoming big release like IC814, and sort of how it came to be, and right up till the release. That would be great.
It's a very interesting journey. It's very intense in many phases. It's very joyful in many phases. And also, it makes you anxious when it's like, you're bringing the baby out into the world, and how is everyone going to receive it? So I can give you the example of IC814, the Kandahar hijack, since it's so pertinent and we are so excited about it. So IC814 was actually one of the first stories that I was really excited about telling. I remember Sarita, who's the producer at Matchbox. Sarita and I met Captain Devi Sharan, and we wanted to get his book. Sarita had already spoken to him, and we were very, very keen. I was very keen that we should tell a world-class story on an event, a historical event that happened in India, where the genesis was India, the impact was in India, but also it had international ramifications. And really tell it in a way which is a true blue Netflix style. We've done a lot of cinema on real stories, historical stories, even hijacks, raids, rescues. But I really wanted to tell this story from all perspectives. The way sometimes we look from India and we see Hollywood stories being told. So that was the intent, that was the passion to tell that story. It was also a story which has not come out for Indian audiences the way it should have come out. Sure. And it's been many years since that event. So we started with meeting Captain Devi Sharan, getting the rights of the book, and starting to develop it. Of course, and development is a tough process, especially when you're looking at a subject where you need so much research, so many perspectives, people in the government you need to talk to. And there were 4 countries across which the plane was flown. So how do you capture every bit of that story? What is the right format? I knew I wanted to do a series. How many episodes should it be? What is the right writer's room to put it together? The creator, the showrunner, what vision should it have? So that is the journey that we took. We really started in all earnest, writing it sometime mid-2020. But we did have several instances where we felt that we needed something more. And then in late 2021, or actually 22, I brought Anubhav Sinha onto the project because I felt that the kind of storytelling that he does, his ability to tell a gritty story with the right kind of appeal for a commercial audience and really staying true to the event, that was something that, Anubhav and I had been wanting to work together on something, and then we spoke about this. I got him to come on the show, and that's when things started moving very rapidly, and it's been a very exciting journey. We shot in Jordan, in Nepal, in India. We put together an absolutely stellar cast, and hats off to Anubhav for really getting that whole cast together. As Netflix, we've been very creatively involved in the entire journey, and I'm very excited about it, more excited than actually anxious, because I really believe that we've done the best with the series, and I think the audiences will find it not only thrilling, but also very eye-opening in many different ways.
If I can come in here and ask you that, when you say you gave the example of bringing on board Anubhav, once it starts rolling, when the shooting starts, how involved are you? Are you there on set? Are you there when the script is being narrated to the actors, in the selection of actors? Or once it's cleared, you've green-lighted it, everything's sanctioned, you just take a back seat and let the creative guys take over? Or how does it work?
At Netflix, actually, we deeply collaborate. And I think that's one of our strengths world over. Because when we are on the streaming side, the way we see audience behavior and across so many markets, formats of storytelling, and the way we see people experimenting, I think we feel that it's our responsibility to bring that understanding to the creators, of how the audiences are reacting to different genres, to the tempo and mood of storytelling. And of course, it is the creative vision is the creators. It has to be. How can we enable them? How can we creatively enable them to bring their vision out in the best possible way? And how can we, collaborate with them on the creative of it? The cast, definitely, we are involved very deeply in the casting of all our series. We are very deeply involved in the scripting of all our series. But when the shoot starts, it's an important time to let the organic energy of the shoot happen. Of course, we are there in a few table reads, but I think there is a time to lean in and a time to pull back. And that is a mix of art and science. And on the best storytelling, on the best projects, the way they come out, good creative producers on the side of the platform or the service, that is our attempt to be supportive, but also to know when to let go. And of course, we get more involved when the edit process begins. And it's not just the creative team from the service side which is involved on the edits, but it's also our post-production team, our VFX teams. In fact, our VFX teams support our creators in a very, very big way, because we do not have that kind of VFX know-how in the market, and even many of our creators haven't experienced the level of VFX that is happening across the world on Netflix projects. So we have our own internal studios like Eyeline and Scanline, where we have the best of VFX technicians, and our own VFX teams is very deeply involved with the creators in supporting them to bring this out.
The other thing I wanted to ask you, a little personal. I don't know how many people know this, but before joining Netflix or joining other production houses, you actually also dabble with journalism.
Yes.
And one of the things that you got involved in terms of while you were a journalist were coal mining, or the illegal coal mining that used to take place in Jharkhand, Bihar, and other areas. I mean, since you're talking about something which is of a political thriller, this is quite thrilling as well. I mean, when do we see that story on Netflix?
I hope I'm able to do that story sooner than later. That was, in fact, it's fascinating that you mention it. It was one of my first long format journalism pieces. Before that, I was interning, so I was doing short feature type of stories, but Dhanbad was one of my first big stories. And I still remember sitting on that hot rock with the fires burning around, and it must be on one of the VHS tapes, that story. I don't even have a VHS player to play it, but we are really very keen to tell all kinds of stories that matter. And I think if you just look at the slate that we are putting together as Netflix India, it's really important for us to have our audiences see themselves reflected in the stories that we tell. There will always be, if I look at Mamla Legal Hai, which is everyone told us this is not a Netflix story, or kind of a show that Netflix should be doing. Patparganj Court and the kind of, the characters and the humor, very different from what people feel Netflix is. But I think Mamla tells you, we are that also. Kala Pani tells you that we can shoot in Andamans and tell a dystopian story. IC814 tells you that we can take a historical event and have a political thriller which had international ramifications, an event. Hira Mandi tells you that we can take a drama genre, with one of the finest creators of India and really take it to the world in its most epic and glorious fashion. Kapil Sharma tells you that we can take a show which is a linear format, comedy show, but upscale, upscale it to a Netflix audience and really deliver a weekly entertainer which is meant for all the families to co-view. So I think, and Curry and Cyanide, which you mentioned earlier, or The Hunt for Veerappan, or even the documentaries which are going to come, the cricket documentary, The Greatest Rivalry, or the lady superstar Nayantara. All of these, the objective is that we tell stories for a very broad and wide set of audience, people with different tastes. Someone who would want to watch a railwayman and be absolutely, stunned with what happened in that one night. Or watch Khaki, the Bihar chapter, which is set in Bihar, in the heartland of the country, and which shows that a cop and a criminal are so deeply linked to each other, and one gives birth to another. So, the voices of creators like Neeraj Pandey, of SLB, of Vishal Bhardwaj in Khufia, of Hansal Mehta in Scoop, which has won so many awards, or Amar Singh Chamkila, like you said, which has just won the award in Melbourne, or Kora. All these are, different in their own ways. Some are raw, some are, sort of edgy thrillers, some are dramas at the heart. So all of this put together reflects what we want to be as an entertainment service, and how we want to be your Netflix, be your Netflix, be my Netflix, and so many people's Netflix.
But how do you gauge the success of content on OTT? Because there are so many different dynamics and constantly evolving ones as well. And it's not just box office numbers or, unlike theatrical releases. So how do you do that?
Success on streaming is a function of many things. Of course, there are internal metrics, and we really believe in being transparent about metrics. We've realized that more and more the industry needs to understand, everyone needs to understand, what does success mean when you say something is a streaming success. And we have several of these reports coming out, which are external reports. And a lot of them are based on very casual methodology. And no one has a common metric to decide what success is. For us, success of the service depends on engagement. I think streaming is all about engagement. How many people came in, how long did they watch for, and how many completed something. So that is very, very important to decide the success of a title. And also, as a service, success truly means, a streaming success means having high engagement, sustained engagement, delivering revenue, and having profit. Because for us as a service, it's very important to plow the profits back into the next set of innovation. The reason why we are able to constantly innovate as a company is because we want to keep these as the holy grail of success in streaming. It's very important to not lose sight of the fact that you need to be a healthy business to be able to constantly innovate, and not just have a race to the bottom where you're just out for gathering subscribers who might actually not be the people who give you sustained engagement. Who might watch one thing and then not watch for a long period of time, or who might click through. What we say often internally is play and stay. It's not just click play. Because you can click play and then you can move out of a title. But do you play and stay? And do you complete something that you're watching? That is what defines the success. And I think the industry needs to move to a more rigorous definition of measurement, and not be so casual about what a view means, what a view hour means. Currently, there's a very casual, so many million people viewed something. There is not even an understanding, and we are again doing something which TV has done. And because TV has done because of its challenge, you cannot tell the absolute number in TV. Because in television, you cannot measure the absolute number. Streaming gives you an absolute science to measure. You know that you can. So when you actually say, speak to a few hundred people and say, do you know about this? Did you watch this? And it is seen, yeah, I know, or I watched. No one likes to say, oh, I didn't, or I didn't know. When you take that as an absolute measure of whether something is successful or not, that's very dangerous for the streaming industry in general as a business.
Why hasn't it happened yet? I mean, in television, linear broadcast, you had TRPs, then you have BRC data. There's some agency that it's an supposedly independent third-party audit that happens week on week. I mean, it's nobody can now say that this is a fledgling industry. This is, just very, very new. OTTs have literally taken over. So why don't we have a proper scientific way of measuring data, which is acceptable to all stakeholders, all streaming platforms?
Yeah, I think it's not happened the world over yet. So, as Netflix, as the streaming pioneers and leaders in the industry, we have started leaning in and being more transparent. And we share our engagement report, which is shared twice a year. And we every Tuesday we share the top 10 list, both the global English and the global non-English list. So we are very forthcoming with our data to even our partners. In fact, when a title releases on the service, we are constantly in touch with our partners to tell them how it's doing, and our partners can log into our website, which tells them, what are the view hours, on Tuesday when it comes, when the report, when the list comes out. And we are constantly in touch with them to tell them at the end of a title, at the end of 28 days, at the end of 91 days, which is where we actually, the span of time that we really look at how a title eventually performed. So it's very important for creators to understand how their stories did they resonate or not, because in box office they get to know. In streaming, it's very important for creators to know, but I think it'll only happen if all companies have the same objective. Everyone is on a different journey right now. So while it is not a fledgling industry, it is still, I would say, early days. And I think the journey we've had as Netflix, other services need to have a bit more of a journey, perhaps, to be able to realize how important it is. Because right now they're also probably beefing up their catalogs.
Just as an aside, did you tweak the way you sort of announce your subscriber numbers way back in April? There were some reports that I just wanted you to clarify on. Are you as regular in terms of announcing your subscriber numbers or the growth therein? Or was there a tweak in April?
Yes, we announced the subscriber numbers, but in April, if you're alluding to this, we did say that from 2025, we will talk about the revenue numbers and not focus on the subscribers. That is something we did share.
Do you think that brings in a certain level of opacity to people who track Netflix on how it's doing? The fact that you will stop announcing subscriber numbers?
I don't think it brings opacity. It's done particularly because we are becoming a far more complex business. We were just a subscription-based VOD service. Now we have advertising, which is such a huge mix. That brings in an additional layer of complexity. Live brings in a very different kind of process of measuring and what it really means. Games are a very big addition to our service. So just looking at that subscriber number is actually not meaningful. What is really meaningful is engagement. Whether it's game engagement days, whether it's, the story or title-driven engagement days, what are the live numbers, and revenue, which is the truest benchmark of how we are doing. And I think at the back end, everyone does calculations and arrives at the numbers.
So you rightly said that it's become far more complex, and I have some numbers here. Like, revenues from streaming services are 1.5 times that of theatrical box office releases, and investments in local original shows and series now represent over 50% of entertainment spends on pay TV, and I'm excluding sports and movies, of course. Now, with such high stakes, is there a pressure to sort of experiment lesser or be less daring than you were when you had started out?
At Netflix, the pressure is always to innovate, never to stop innovating or experimenting. And I think that's what has kept the mojo going for us as Netflix. Even when we had a slump a year ago, the fact that we turned around so fast and we launched our ad service in 12 countries, we kept doubling down on games, we added live to the mix, and we had the password sharing, initiative that we stopped account sharing. All of that so fast aside of everything that we do on the entertainment side, in terms of the kind of titles and stories that we've brought out, like Baby Reindeer has been a breakout, Hira Mandi for us has been a breakout, Kapil has been an absolutely different kind of, an invite to the audiences out there, and what it has done for the service in terms of bringing new kinds of audiences, and so many other titles from different markets. For us, it's really about constantly innovating to tell more and better stories, newer stories, and also to create the kind of experience for the members, a product experience that makes you want to watch the service, that makes you want to discover more, to stay with more. That's why, for us, the lean in behavior is to run a sustainable business and plow it all back to making the service better.
Sure, sure. But as viewership dynamics change from mobile devices to connected TV and more family viewing, and of course, stuff like Kapil Sharma are natural pivots. But with changing choices, when I said pressure, can we expect a refreshingly raw and uncensored show like Sacred Games going forward? Because are people more accepting of that, or is there a pressure on Netflix to cater to those choices or changes in those choices as well?
There is no pressure to Netflix to be one thing or another. I think that's the most liberating thing that I feel as a creative person at Netflix, and that I want to make my team feel. That's the most liberating thing that as a content business person also that I feel at Netflix, because for us, it's really important that we program for the whole spectrum of audiences. We have the absolute core audiences, the very first Netflix adopters in the market who love the international content, but who also want to watch Indian content. Everyone, as Indians, we are very partial to our own content because cultural context matters a lot to us. So we love our movies. We love our stories in long format, in non-fiction, in documentary format. So programming to that cohort is still as relevant to Netflix. And going wider and wider to an audience is also very important, because that is where the continued growth and momentum is. So we will always, and then we will have titles like Amar Singh Chamkila, which bring both prestige and performance, and Hira Mandi, which becomes so big that they talk to both ends of the audiences. And then we have titles like Mamla Legal Hai, which might seem small, or Kota Factory, which are those little gems that actually are very hardworking stories that really appeal to the hearts and minds of people. A film that we are coming up with, Sector 36, very gripping story from the House of Maddock, told by the director Aditya Nimbalkar and Vikrant Masi and Deepak Dobriyal. When you see it, you cannot look at it and say it is meant for one person or another. When you look at IC 814, you cannot say that it's run of the mill and we've seen something like this, or that it talks to one cohort or the other. So I think we will always tell stories which are meant for specific audiences, and then there will be stories and formats that are meant for everyone.
So while choosing content, your mantra still is what Ted Sarandos gave you, which is gut, data, gut, right? Is that what you still follow?
By the way, I absolutely love that mantra, and I had read about that mantra just like you even before I joined Netflix. So storytelling is always about gut. Storytelling is not about a math. It's not, data can only inform about audience taste preferences. It can only tell you what size of audience potentially a crime genre can give you, or a romance genre, or a thriller, or a non-fiction format. But it can never tell you what is the next amazing idea, what is the next favorite film or series that an audience will absolutely fall in love with. And data can never, never tell you what is a global show or a film, because there is nothing called a global show or a film that a creator can plan or conceive, or a service can plan or conceive. It's an audience actually that delivers something which becomes a global phenomenon.
So how does a gentleman click outside of UK? How does a Squid Games click outside of South Korea? How does Hiramandi get exported to around the world? How do you keep the balance between local and taking that local and making it international? I mean, that's because, as you said, cultural resonances, cultural references, it's different. So how do you make that local content truly global?
And is there a pattern that you've sort of gauged now as to which one will become famous globally, like Hiramadi did in 43 countries, I think?
71.
Oh, great. Thanks
Yes.
for that update. Yeah.
So, I wouldn't say a pattern, because actually we don't have. One of the finest things about streaming is that you don't see patterns. In fact, the minute you see patterns, the patterns have to be broken, because audiences are experimenting so much, they're watching so much, they don't want more of the same. And they have disdain for more of the same. I mean, if we look at ourselves as audiences, would you keep, yes, you'll have a genre preference, but if the same genre is delivered to you in the same way, maybe you'll watch it at best twice. After that, you'll be like, why am I wasting my time watching something which seems like a formula? So it's very important to know that how something travels on Netflix is by itself a very fascinating thing. At the creative end, you have to create something which is very local and very authentic. It talks to your audience. It is culturally specific, but very universal at its heart, in terms of the emotional appeal of it, in terms of things that matter, values that matter to people all around the world. So when it's universal in its appeal, it's very culturally nuanced, that's when people outside of the home market really start resonating with it. If Squid Game had been less Korean and trying to be more Hollywood, it would have cracked neither market. It would have not won in Korea, and it would have not won the world. But because it won Korea in such a big way, and then from Korea it started growing and growing and traveling to other markets, the discovery happened. And the product of Netflix, the recommendations that we have, is so evolved that when a home country delivers a hit, that's when it really kicks in, the recommendation, and that's when the juggernaut kicks in. And it starts taking that title, that story to everyone who will potentially love it. And there are things like our key art, which plays such an important role. At Netflix, the way we roll out a story on product is equally as fascinating. So we have all of these different kinds of key arts, what you see as thumbnails. So you will receive a different kind of a thumbnail. You might get a different kind of a thumbnail of the same show. We make multiple thumbnails, which are key arts actually, because your preferences, your content preferences could be different. So a different element in the show might actually excite you. But we try to be authentic to the story and to what are the important elements in the story, so that we reflect all those elements in the key art that we do. And for Squid Game, the key art that really traveled was the masked key art. Same way for Minnal Murli, the key art that helped it travel across so many countries was the lungi, a superhero in a lungi, which is so unique to India, and as a superhero, something that you've not seen. And I don't know if you know this, we got a shout out from the Tottenham Hotspur's captain for Minnal Murli. Yes, and how can I forget his name? No, the actor Tom, who plays Spider-Man. Tom Holland. Yes, Tom Holland. So both of them actually posted about Minnal Murli, that it was on their watch list. So this is how the key art helps it in traveling, the recommendation helps it in traveling, and Chor Nikal Ke Bhaga, which actually became such a big hit in LATAM. The same way, it was a heist thriller, and the fact that it had elements of that heist, which it targeted the right kind of people and offered it to them as a choice to see, and they clicked and they stayed. So when you're culturally specific, locally nuanced, and there are themes that talk to everyone, and the product kicks in. It becomes a hit locally. That's when it appeals everywhere.
But here I have a follow-up question, which is the algorithm perhaps will work better if you're watching on a device which is exclusively yours. Like if I'm watching content on my mobile or on my on my tablet. But how will the algorithm work if it's on a connected TV where the family is watching? How will the algorithm then pick up the parents as well as the kids' preference? Oh, and along with that, I want to understand, how is India watching Netflix? Is it more on mobile devices? Is it more on connected TV? Is it more on tablets? I mean, what's the viewership pattern like?
So and you know this, in Asia, mobile viewing is very high. In India, mobile viewing is very high. But for Netflix, the 10-foot experience is very important. We create for that 10-foot experience. And as we've gone along in our journey, we see more and more people actually signing up for the TV plans. So more and more people are actually enjoying Netflix on their television sets. But the flexibility is very important. For us as Netflix, giving people the choice to watch on whatever device they want to watch it on is very important. And also in India, traffic time is a very long duration where people are just waiting, and there's a lot of catch up and mobile viewing that happens during that time. So I think for us as a service, it's really important to give our audiences, our members, the choice in plans, the choice in devices, and of course, added to the choice in content. And to your first question,
Which is like, I mean, when it's a experience which is you're watching it on your mobile or your some other smart device, it's easy for the algorithm to understand or gauge my viewership pattern, my likes and my dislike. But when it becomes a family viewing, then how does the technology of Netflix understand what the family wants to watch?
Yeah, very interesting question. So we have the profiles for that, right? So if you have 4 people in a family, you would have different profiles. The kids' profile is separate, which is password protected. The adults' profiles, you can always, like, we have 3 people in my family, including me. So I have my husband, my daughter, and me, and we all have our own profiles. And my profile recommends to me on my taste preferences, and my daughter's profile recommends to her. My husband loves to watch a lot of crime documentaries from all over the world and different kinds of shows and movies, so he has his own taste and preference. But when there is co-viewing, let's say something like Kapil Sharma show, which drives a lot of co-viewing, it would be seen from a certain profile. Right? So whoever's profile it is being seen from will also have those kind of recommendations coming more to them, which is comedy. And on each title, we have tens of tags, like up to 100 tags, perhaps in certain cases. And these meta tags at the back end of a program actually help you, when there is search, or when there are preferences, recommendations, it helps a person choose, and it helps the recommendation engine to actually surface the right title for a person.
You talked about, if I can use the word, the hybrid model, you've brought in advertising at one tier and subscription the other tier. You're experimenting it with 12 markets. What about India? Do you think a market like India is ripe for that kind of a dual strategy, or it's still not there yet?
Speaking for Netflix, it's a bit of a down the line strategy for us, not something which is currently happening or anything I can update on. In the market per se, if I just look at the streaming world, ad-supported has been around. I have worked on an ad-supported platform when I launched the previous digital platform at Viacom, Voot, that I was working at. That was ad-supported. But at Netflix, we want to perfect our ad tier in the 12 markets that we are currently in. We are scaling up very well. We are ramping up in the US market. We have 2 markets in Asia, Japan and Korea, where we are also there. India is, like I said, a little down the road. And also, if I can just say that we are seeing great momentum for us in the subscription-based VOD model. And for us, we really want to keep growing in the SVOD space first.
I'll bring you back to the bit about cultural nuance and Minnal Murli. One recent example is Maharaja, which is a gem of a film. In a recent interview, you had said that every country wants to see their own stories. And now it's more complex in India, which is many countries in one, right? So what I'm alluding to is, regional content. How happy are you in the way that this piece is evolving? And would you want it to evolve faster in terms of, building that library, etc.? And how are you doing that?
I think the best thing that streaming has done within India, I would say, is to actually bring the North and South audiences together to really appreciate cinema and stories as such, irrespective of where the story is coming from. At Netflix, we often say that a story can come from anywhere and entertain people everywhere. And I think during the pandemic, this was a dramatic shift that happened. Just like globally, we saw the Korean content travel everywhere. Within India, what we saw was the South stories finally getting to travel northwards and audiences to begin appreciating. Earlier, if you just look at the number of cinemas we have in this country, we have about 8,500 cinemas for a country of 1.4 billion people. The math is all wrong. We are such an entertainment-loving country. There aren't enough cinemas where a South film title could have actually come and played, or a Hindi film to go down south and play in enough cinemas. But when streaming happened, access happened. People were at home, they saw a lot of content, they saw content in other languages from across the world, so there was no reason why they wouldn't see their own stories from the south of India. And that kind of set off this love and appreciation. So now where we are, I think as Netflix, we were a little slower in the beginning. Because for us, it was really important to get our strategy right for the Hindi market. Because we did not, like I said earlier, we did not have a local team when I joined. So getting that team right, getting the strategy for the Hindi market right. And we were beginning to invest well in the South language content. Minnal Murli was an example. We had some early originals that we made. Aside of Minnal Murli, we had Navrasa, we had Pava Kadaigal, we had Pitta Kathalu. But we were not engaged in getting the South cinema, the theatrical cinema on the service, the big cinema. We had smaller cinema. And then we kind of decided, there was a point in time when we knew that we were really beginning to deliver to our Hindi strategy. And when Netflix moves, it moves really fast. And I think that's why we have the confidence that when we are going into something, we are going in with a very clear thought process. And we have taken all the steps that we need to at our end to set up the right team, to put the right kind of investments. And there was a point in time when we announced that we are going to start building our South slate. And I think we haven't looked back. In fact, we have the finest South slate. In fact, it's great you asked. Tomorrow, Kalki 2898 is coming, but in Hindi. But we've had Maharaja, as you've said, we've had Salar, we've had Guntur Karam this year. We've had so many different stories. Goat is coming, Devara is coming. Pushpa 2 in all languages will be on the service. Indian 2 released just a couple of weeks ago. So we have a very robust slate. This year we announced the 12 big blockbusters, Telugu blockbusters, which will be coming, and 9 Tamil big films. And our development is on for the originals. We have begun, we are very deep into writing and producing some of them. So by next year, I think we will be in a good space to roll out some South originals also.
You spoke about moving fast, and just an aside, wouldn't it be easier for you to acquire a regional, smaller OTT platform to have access to their library instead of taking that much time to build your own? And I'm talking about regional films and content, of
No,
course.
that's a great thought. It's not that we haven't considered it, but there is a certain ambition that we have and a quality that we want to bring on Netflix as branded originals. And for us, it always works to really create ourselves first and to understand the dynamics of the market. We buy a lot of stories as cinema. And if there are series being made in the market, if there is something good, we would always be open to even buying. We engage with content at every stage. For us, it is not, we don't have a fixed notion that only we have to make. It can be made anywhere. But how we are as a business model is to also experiment and learn ourselves so that we are always a creative house first, and besides being a service. And we are already, like I said, engaging in the buying of cinema.
Creative house, of course, because $17 billion is your content budget. I mean, that's, I think all big Hollywood studios put together would probably have 60% of that as their annual budget, and you haven't revised it downwards. If India is such a powerhouse of content, can we expect, and now that you're saying, you have a full team in place, the whole, you've got your India, the mojo is back, would it be wrong to assume that over half of that 17 billion would be plowed into India content?
Half of that. That is actually, honestly, if I can say this, that's very preposterous to even suggest.
Okay.
And I will tell you why. Because we program all over the world. At the top of the conversation, you yourself said that we are 278 million subscribers all over the world. And that is just the accounts, actually, not subscribers. That is just the accounts. If I add 2 people, which is a very conservative estimate, 2 people per account also, and we know it's much more than that, we as a service are programming for way more than 500 million people at a very conservative estimate. No studio in the world or entertainment service in the world has ever programmed for that many people in that many languages that we program from so many different countries and locations around the world. It's such an ambitious, sort of plan and goal and a juggernaut that's running across the world, that the $17 billion is to actually entertain the world. Within that, every country has more than its fair share of budget to be able to delight its audiences, to be able to take whatever creative bets we want, to be able to innovate and experiment at the pace and consistency that we do at Netflix. So I think we have a very robust budget for India. We are invested in a very deep way in India for a very, very long road ahead. There's lots of, when we had entered the market, we used to share the budget, and then we realized that is so pointless. Like, there is no point talking about budget figure as such, because we are in the business of storytelling. And so long as we are demonstrating that what our ambition is and the rate at which we are, every week there's something new to watch on Netflix. I don't think any service is providing that. We are not a one and done service. We are not saying that there is only one title or one story and all of you now have to watch it whether you like it or not. Like I said, everybody has their own version of Netflix. Everybody has their own premiere night, whichever they want to choose. For someone, it could be binging, on a Friday night, watching every single day of the week, to a weekend watch. So I think that's the fun part at Netflix, that we, that's the choice, convenience, flexibility. And like I said, from a budget standpoint, we are taking all the interesting and exciting and how should I say, anxiety-inducing sometimes bets that we need to take.
On budget, and also harking back to your mention of Kalki, um, is it a concern that theaters are filling up again, cinemas and theaters? This is a game that OTT platforms like Netflix had disrupted, right? And I'm talking about a two-pronged concern. One is, of course, competition, because people are going there more. And the other is, the bigger hit a film becomes, the more expensive it is to acquire, and your content costs aren't going down soon, and that sort of hampers margins. So how do you see that?
Very interesting and pertinent question. And I want to, hopefully, through your podcast, once and for all, clarify that OTT did not disrupt theatrical business. It's the pandemic which disrupted the theatrical business. And I think it's important to remember that. It's also important to remember that actually streaming services, and I'm not just speaking of Netflix, streaming services as a whole were standing right beside the industry, helping to actually keep the wheels turning, because there were so many people who could not hold on to those films. People had to be paid, business had to run, people had to run their houses. It's not just the studios or the senior people, the talent, the creators who are actually involved with the films. It's everyone who's part of that crew. So it was important for cinema to come out, and streaming services became a destination. And I think even now, and I'm very happy that cinemas are back in the game, and there are films that are becoming hits. There are films that are not doing so well, but that clearly tells you that the audience knows which films that they want to go and watch in the theaters, what do they enjoy watching in theaters, and what are the films that are not cutting it for them. So I think it's really important for us as an industry to see that we need to mature and we need to tell better stories. And there will be stories now, as a habit, there will be stories that audiences will watch on streaming services, and there are movies that they'll want to watch in theaters. If you look at what's happening right now, Haseen Dilruba 2 is a franchise. It's our first movie franchise, and it has become a blockbuster on the service. Like, it is as successful, if I would say, as any of our big titles, even when there's Stree 2, which is doing so well in the theaters. So I don't think that we are competing in that sense, or that a film which doesn't do well in the theater does well on the service. That's another myth that I want to bust. A film that does well in the theaters also does well on streaming. Very rarely will you have a film that does not do well in theaters and gets discovered on streaming and people like it. It's a rare thing. Mostly people value their time a lot. So it's important for films to do well in theaters. But also, do we as Netflix, and this is a phenomenon peculiar to Netflix because of the way our recommendation engine is, and the kind of diverse audiences that we cater to in India and around the world, that even a medium scale successful film coming on Netflix can again have a second lease of life and become a rage and a global phenomenon. And successful films like Animal, like, all the successful films that we've had on our service, Animal, Jawan, Fighter, Donkey, Salar, Maharaja, they become even more successful. And a little gem like Lapata, which had great word of mouth, but would have got lost in a theatrical space because not enough people would have gone and watched it, has actually become an absolute global rage.
Right. One more question about another concern. You spoke about this whole family viewing versus, individual viewing. The entry point is still very, very personalized. And that brings us to this whole hyper customization of subscriptions, right? Because, I know of many of my friends who subscribe to Netflix only for one show and then they will cancel their subscriptions. While that brings you volumes, isn't revenue a problem? Because that's the figure that you are going to share more and more.
It's not a problem for us in the sense that our business model works on really working hard and giving more and more reasons to our audiences to come month on month. So for us, it's not just about getting new members in, getting new audiences in, but also what is the next thing that we are, releasing for them. How are we stacking up our slate in terms of the diversity it has, in terms of the conversations that bring people back to the service? How long do they stay on the service? It's something that we work on day in and day out when we are planning not just which stories we are going to tell, but how are we going to schedule those stories? How are we going to launch them? What is the theatrical cinema that is coming in that period? And how does it interplay with the originals that we are doing? And now, what is the weekend programming like Kapil, like the season 2 is going to come? So it's a mix of all of these things. And for us as a service, like I said earlier, it doesn't work for us to be a highly subsidized annual service that does not, it's like a gym membership. I often tell my team, this is not something that we don't discuss internally. I often give this example of a gym membership that you sign up for. If you don't, if you have the membership, you'll be like, okay, I'll go next day or I'll go next month. You have it. And after a while, it'll start pinching you that you're not using it enough and why you signed up for it. Maybe you should cancel it. For us, it's very important to give our members that ease, that it's in your hands. The choice is in your hands. The responsibility is ours to actually make you want to stay on Netflix.
So that stickiness that you're talking about, would sports be the obvious next frontier for Netflix to conquer? You've already started. You had a deal to show two NFL matches in Christmas, the Mike Tyson boxing matches. Then you have the WWE. Drive to Survive has become a cult among Formula One lovers. India craves, for sports as well. Is the secret sauce therefore sports?
I think sports world over is something that is seeing a resurgence in terms of viewing. As Netflix, we've done brilliant sports adjacent storytelling. We are into narrative sports in a very, very big way, and not just Drive to Survive, which was the first one, but Unchained and so many others, documentaries like Beckham. They have totally changed the game. And even live, like you said. But are we going to get into the sports leagues in a very big way? Internationally, we've begun, like we have the NFL games, but there isn't a plan as such to go as deep and big in sports immediately. But India, I can very safely say that we are expanding our entertainment portfolio. It's working brilliantly for us. You have seen the momentum of growth. And if I were to even refer back to your earlier question of audiences signing up for one and then going, I think the way we are planning our entertainment portfolio and the momentum and the pace of growth we are seeing, we are always adding more people than would actually probably take that decision to move out.
You spoke about bets, and this is one that Arijit just asked. What are the bets that we see Netflix taking outside of your comfort zone right now? Do we see you getting into, if not sports, more of reality TV? Or what other segments do we see Netflix India veering into in the next 2-3 years?
We are getting into some really exciting new genres that we haven't done before, the scale that we haven't done before from India, which is one of the titles that we announced recently is Rakt Brahmand, The Bloody Kingdom, which is by Rajan DK. That's a very interesting, large format story with a world building and VFX that we hope to excite everyone with. We are also deep into our development on certain ideas on the unscripted side. So that's an interesting space that we will continue to do. We've had tremendous success with our documentaries. We will continue to do that. The kind of subjects we choose, it's always a creative bet is not just a new category. It's what you're doing in the same category also. So I think that is also going to be something very interesting that we continue. The scripted series is always the different kinds of stories that we are going to be doing. We've also announced a very different kind of a rom-com title, Royals, which is going to be an interesting one. And many big and brand defining stories that we are currently working on. The South Originals piece is something that I'm very excited about also. And I want to really stay, focused on learning, experimenting with our first slate. That's always how we work at Netflix. Be humble, learn fast from your mistakes, from other people's mistakes. Always look to surprise your audiences, delight your audiences, because they are the ones who you're making for. And also stay a true fan of entertainment so that you're plugged into the pulse of the audience and you're not just being an executive.
But, you talked about the southern slates. When it comes to, the new frontiers or the new challenges, of course, there's no doubt Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Bengali. These four seems to be big pockets of content, regional content. But would it be also a personal mission to look at other languages, Gujarati, Punjabi? I'm sure. I mean, they have their own cinema as well. I mean, do we now see more of those content in those languages also coming up, the way maybe the southern slate has emerged?
One example is, of course, Elephant Whisperers, which is extremely and is just to add to that question, is production infrastructure a deterrent to you going to those far-flung places where you can get great content?
Not at all. Production infrastructure is not a deterrent to us for storytelling. Like I said, we've shot in Bihar in the middle of COVID for Khaki, the Bihar chapter. We've shot Chamkila in the heart of Punjab. We've shot Kora in Punjab. Our next series, Khaki, the Bengal chapter, which is the season 2, is set in Bengal. So there are languages like Punjabi and Bengali and Marathi, which we feel we are also catering through our Hindi programming because we are setting the stories there. South languages are a completely different dynamic. The overlap between South audiences understanding Hindi is far less than Bengali audiences understanding Hindi, or Punjabi audiences, or Gujarati or Marathi. So I think that is down the road. There is no urgent need to program for those audiences because we can see those audiences consume so much of Hindi cinema and long format series programming, and they have their own cinema also. But how we want to talk to those audiences is by telling stories from those markets, from those language markets, having characters that you can, like Scoop is a classic example of that, where it was around J-Day's murder, a Gujarati journalist, and J-Day being a very senior Bengali journalist in Delhi. So there are stories that, India is one whole. And how do we tell stories from every part of the country? And infrastructure-wise, I think down south, filmmaking is, probably sometimes I feel even better than north, where there are lesser studios and technicians.
I also wanted to ask you one other remarkable thing that OTT platforms have done, like Netflix, is create a whole ecosystem of dubbing artists, and the whole in different languages that you dub a particular film or show. Also subtitling, and there's also stuff for the guided versions of the languages that you have. How is that evolving?
I personally feel that subbing and dubbing has been the secret superpower of Netflix in the way that it's really made our stories travel. I know that several other platforms are doing it, and that's a great thing for more and more stories to actually be accessible to audiences around the world. But for us, what has really, it's really been a passion to take stories to different parts of the world in different languages. We sub and dub in 37 languages. And if I have to give you an example, like Hiramandi, we dubbed in, there is more subbing done, more subtitling done, and dubbing is on the rise now. Hiramandi, we dubbed in up to 13 languages. And 8 of those languages were international languages. So that really tells you how we are sensing that this title is going to appeal to certain markets. We also do a very thorough check internally. We have an internal program which also suggests which markets it could potentially do well in. For instance, our licensed film Fighter, we knew that it would appeal to the LATAM audiences. So we had Spanish and Portuguese dubs for it. IC814 Kandahar Hijack has been dubbed in 8 languages, so including Spanish, Portuguese, and Polish language. And we keep adding languages as we realize that a title is tracking, like Gangubai. Once we realized it was doing so well in Thailand, we actually had Thai dubs. Thai was already included to Hiramandi because we knew that there was an audience that was created. It just makes people experience another culture and understand the world a little better. So I feel the way it has not just helped create an ecosystem of very talented people, a new stream of work in the entertainment space where dubbing artists are there, subtitling artists who are writing out the scripts and for the subtitles, being very authentic, being very true to the language and getting the essence of something and translating it for the right emotion and context to happen. So I think the industry is maturing there also. It's only going to increase. I feel very happy while saying that, because that's another space where more talent is coming in. And I think as Netflix, I feel very proud and humbled that we've made the world into this global melting pot where people are experiencing each other's cultures and understanding each other's context a little more through storytelling. People know the Korean dishes now, and restaurants are opening because K-dramas are doing so well in India. So I think subbing and dubbing is something which is at the heart of Netflix stories traveling.
That's I think it. We've run out of questions. Thank you, Monika, for joining us on the Morning Brief. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been so wonderful talking to you. Thank you for having me here.